Hey guys, Andrew from Axel here. Today we're going to practice a mobility-based class. What you need to get started is your Axel bar and also a nice place where you can put a knee down to softly touch on the ground. So maybe an exercise mat would work, or a yoga mat. You might have to double layer it a little bit. Or even maybe a carpet in your living room would be ideal for this. Okay, let's get started. First thing we want to do when we're getting started with mobility is learn a position that is somewhat yoga-based, but also just very floor-based. What you want to do is you want to find your hands, knees, and toes all on the ground. So it's really a 6-point posture. And the first thing that we're looking for here is what's called neutral spine. Okay? What we want to see with neutral spine is a slight bend here at the lumbar, where you can see some curvature happening there. We don't want to be overly flexed forward. We don't want to be hyperextended all the way back. It's somewhere neutral, so that if someone's going to push you from side to side and you feel your core tighten, your back is in that nice little gentle arch that happens there at the bottom. We're going to find a nice mobility piece where we open the chest up in either direction. So we're flexing the spine forward, pulling the nose all the way in towards the sternum, and then exhaling as we round the opposite direction. And what we're doing right now is just teaching the spine to have a little bit more flexion and extension with all the little muscles that connect the vertebrae together. When you're finished with this, I want you to return to the neutral spine position. That's going to be part one of our mobility-based program today. From our neutral spine position and our 6-point touch, we're going to step our foot forward outside the front hand. So we'll bring a foot all the way to the outside, and you can see me here. I might want to walk this back knee back just a little bit. The goal of mobility here is that we're trying to gently increase the range of motion through the big joint patterns of our body. What I want to do is I want to take the same elbow as the foot that steps forward and lower it down as if it was going to touch the ankle, or what some people say the mid-step of the foot, which is right here at the bottom. So we're going to lower the body down. You'll feel a big stretch through the hamstring and the groin of the front leg, and then all the way through the hip flexor and the quad of the back leg. I want to hold that at the bottom there and just try and breathe in and out gently so that you can feel that mobility starting to increase. I'm pretty tight here. I did a run this morning, so I'm feeling right now all throughout the back side of the leg here. It doesn't quite want to go down as low as it needs to go. That's totally normal. If you exercise the day before, you're going to feel it a little bit. Then place your left hand firm and reach your right hand and draw it all the way up towards the ceiling. You want to be active with this left shoulder, pushing all the way through. And then what we want to do once we're here is squeeze as hard as you can that base glute. And what you'll feel is a nice pulling sensation through the front side of the hip. You're really going to get stretched up and open. A big deep inhale there, and exhale there as well. And then if you're up for a challenge, this is always going to be a little bit tricky. What we want to do is we want to take the back hand and grab for the rear foot. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of a cramp in the hamstring, so be careful as you reach back there. And that is very tight for me. Like I said, I went on a run earlier, so I'm feeling that. As I start to sink forward there, you can pull the quad a little bit more gently up to the body. Woo. Try to not sit backwards this way, but let your body really reach all the way forward. Now I'm starting to loose up a little bit. If you can relax that front hip, it'll come forward, or the back hip, it'll come forward just a little bit more. Last thing we're gonna do, you're gonna rock back. If you wanna center your foot just a little bit more, and we're gonna act like we're pulling that toe back towards us. This is a really nice stretch through the back of the hamstring, posterior chain. You'll notice I'm pulling my toe back towards me so I can get a really big stretch through the calf. I usually do this movement pattern that we're going right now before every exercise sequence. It's not such an aggressive stretch that I'm trying to increase flexibility, but I'm just kind of getting warmed up here to make sure that I'm really mobile through all the parts. Go ahead and grab for that left hand around the right foot if you can. You notice I'm starting to bend the knee back and forth there a little bit. Big time stretch here, but it feels good, and it really improves over time. So the good part about this is mobility is something, it's a skill set for your body that you can work for. Let's go ahead and move to the opposite side here. Again, hands are going to be down. We're going to just establish where that neutral spine position is. And then left foot comes up and forward. And again, I'm feeling that actually even more on this side. Sometimes one side of the body is a little bit tighter than the other. That's totally normal. We're going to take our left elbow, drop it down to that instep or the ankle right there again, and then press it with the right hand. And you'll have a nice rotation. If you want to use the leg to push open a little bit more, that's totally okay. We're going to squeeze that right cheek, hold there, and then drop back for that nice quad pull. Shifting forward, trying to let everything relax here as you're in this position. And then push back, maybe center the foot just a little bit more for that front hamstring stretch. And again, I'm going to walk it out and maybe just bend that knee a little bit and pull back from the toe. And that's feeling really good right about now. It's a great thing to do before and even after exercise. If you're feeling tight after a big workout, this is what you want to do here. And then we'll bring the foot back down and we return to our 6-point stance and on to the next. The great thing about this 6-point stance is the variety of different mobility exercises we can perform from it. I'm going to cheat myself open just a little bit so you guys can see what I'm doing. But this is another variation of the 6-point, and all you need is really just to have a knee down, and again, that soft place that you can put a knee. So if you haven't found that yet, go ahead and double layer your mat or get to a more comfortable place. A pillow would even work, yeah, something simple like that. What I want to do is I'm going to kick my leg out to the side, directly perpendicular to my body. So if I'm running this direction, we're going to send the leg out to a 90-degree. And the goal here is you'll feel it immediately as a pull down through the inner thigh on this side. This is a groin stretch. We call this a kickstand. What we want to do is you're going to walk your left leg a little bit wider and send that hip back and forth there so you can really start to feel the rocking sensation. Now here's a key point when we're doing this is we want to keep the foot in line with the opposite knee. So the short leg that's bent, you want to make sure that the foot is just as wider because it rotates the leg just so you can stretch a little bit more. If you're feeling great, you can push it just a little bit wider. I wouldn't go out inside your comfort zone here. You want to make sure that your body's feeling good and responding well to this. And that's my kickstand on my right side. And then you can slowly rock back just a little bit more, bring that foot back in. I'm going to go to the opposite side. This is nice, so you can see I'm sweating a little bit. This is getting a little bit of a good workout post a recovery workout. It's a really, really beneficial thing to do. So we're gonna rock back again there. It's not quite wide enough for me. I'm gonna cheat that right knee out just a little bit more. And now I feel that here on this side. I do a little bit better on my left side than I do with my right. It's just not quite as tight. My right leg tends to dominate. I have a little bit of a long-term knee issue on this side. When you have an injury on one side versus the other, you're going to notice that there's some little things that'll nag back and forth. Yeah, some of the muscle balance issues won't be the same on a side with an injury, especially a long-standing one. That's to be expected, but you know, with injuries, we like to work around them. We don't like to stop exercising or training. So just make sure you still have those patterns going. And I'm really working the kickstand here. I feel this really, really good. I'm feeling great. I don't want to go too far because again, if I'm using this as a pre-workout or a movement pattern warm-up, then we want to stop where we're starting to feel those extra sensations. Okay, that concludes our session from the 6-point stance. The next thing I want to work on is called a 90-90, and it's also from a seated position. And what we want to do is you want to make exactly what it says, 2 90-degree angles with each leg. So the lower leg kicking forward on this side, it's my right foot that's out, my left leg that's back. And what I want to do is I want to find my hand right behind the knee that is down, right, the inside. This is called internal rotation onto this hip. So as this hip internally rotates more, I'm going to have this hand out behind yourself. Make sure that you get this right. This might take a little bit of a second to think about where am I oriented in space. Immediately you're going to start to feel that pulling sensation happen on the inside of the hip. It's totally normal. What we want to do is rotate like you're going to try and bring your outside shoulder closer to this inside knee that is down. I'm going to rotate there. You're seeing my face a little bit here, making some facial expressions. That's because I feel this quite a bit through my left leg. It's great. Just make sure that the left hip area is completely relaxed. You don't want to have any tight muscles in this position. This is not again, it's a mobility exercise. We might be going just a little bit further out than we ordinarily would. What I'm going to do now, keep the same position. Drop the chin down towards the knee, you're gonna feel a big stretch on the outside glute of this leg, and man, it feels amazing. And I can really feel that. I might even turn towards this more, so I'm gonna rotate my back this way just to gently rotate. And that is a big stretch, but it feels really good, especially if you've been doing a lot of lifts, like we like to incorporate it in our weekly programming. You're gonna feel this stretch big time. We're gonna flip it over, go to the opposite side. So 90-90 this way. And I feel this even more in my right hip. I talked a little bit about leg imbalances earlier. This is an interesting one because, a few years ago I had what was called an anterior pelvic tilt on the right side of my body, which means I was using my quad too much on this side. And you can start to feel a pinching sensation happen in the hip. You ever felt that? Maybe that's something that's going on. It's usually an indicator that your glute is not firing correctly, right? And we always want to keep these glutes and abs firing. Those are two really important things to keep turned on and engaged at all times during exercise. But so this hip is a little bit funky for me. It's always turned in just a little bit. So I like to do this stretch especially well. It helps me stretch that tight capsule on the back side of the hip. Again, I want to turn my left shoulder to my right knee that's down, and then drop my nose down and my chin down all the way for this left leg. If you want to grab the front foot so it doesn't move, that's okay. And again, just turn yourself open just a little bit more. Don't want to do too much, but just so that you feel that sensation happening and that big stretch happening through your hip. Man, this is good. You'll come back up. If you want to just kind of butterfly it out here at the top, you'll feel we did a lot on the groin already, so we don't necessarily need to try and improve the mobility there. You can see I'm cutting pretty flat towards the ground, so pretty good. That concludes the 90-90. The next thing we want to work on for our mobility section is a glute stretch. There's a few different variations of it. I'm going to show you a couple here today. The first of which is going to be in what we call our crab position, right? Bringing over from some animal flow. We'll see a lot of this as we go into our body weight programming, but we're really big on establishing the core and the connection of the kinetic chain down to the floor. That's where we are right here. What I want to do to start with is cross, and if you can, I need to cheat over maybe just a little bit so you can see. I'm going to cross my right leg over top of my left and just hold there for a second. You'll feel immediately just a big stretch happening in the glute on the right side. All right, so I'm kind of relaxed through my shoulders, not too much tension there because I do the stretch a lot. If you don't do the stretch a lot, you might really feel a lot of tension all the way through the back side of the leg. This is, I would say, the first stage of what this stretch should be. We're gonna start to pull our chin down towards, and you'll feel like it's gonna go a little bit more towards the middle part of your shin there, pushing forward and bringing the body closer together. This is gonna intensify the stretch on the glute. Feels really good. We're gonna step and switch sides. And now you'll see something funny happen here. My left glute is tighter than my right glute. So I'm a little bit more bunched up on this particular angle. So what I might do, if it's okay and comfortable, is pull that heel down just a little bit more because that's a very intense stretch. A lot of times one glute is tighter than the other, and that may or may not be because it is also the dominant glute. In my circumstance, my instance, on my left leg jumper, so my left glute's going to be tighter than my right, and that means that the rotators in the group, the deep rotators, are also going to kind of keep it in place. What you want to do, here's the secret about this, is don't overstretch that glute. Don't fight to always open it up over time. It's got plenty of opportunity to be able to do that as it goes along. Okay, so just gentle stretch it over the course of many weeks and months. Again, I'm going to bring my nose forward, chin forward, and feel that really nice stretch happening through the left glute. Let me show you a couple of different variations that you might like as well. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab a just very simple couch ottoman from over here. And with this ottoman, as I bring it over, you can find this anywhere in your home. Almost everybody has something like this. You could use a couch, you could use an ottoman, you could use a chair if it's comfortable. I like a padded surface to be able to have a nice easy place for the ankle to rest, but this is called an elevated pigeon. So if you felt like that wasn't a big enough stretch and you wanted to try something a little bit different, I'm going to take my right leg and drape it down over top of this. It's important that this isn't too high. We want to keep it about 12 to 16 inches, maybe 18 inches off the ground at the very most. for most people. Obviously, the taller you are, the higher you can go because your base leg is going to be lower. But if you're down at the bottom, you want to really make sure that you're using a lower surface to practice this particular stretch. We're going to have the right leg coming straight out from the hip. And what I want to do is just establish myself here. Nice deep breaths. Make sure that this base leg is centered. It doesn't need to be kicked out, or sometimes I like to do this. Try and bring it there. You'll feel that intensify the stretch. So we want to bow at the waist from this point. And this is a major stretch for that top hip. It feels really good. You don't want to go too far. Again, for mobility, we just need to be able to open it up. A lot of times the folks say that you keep a lot of stress and tension in your hips. Man, it's incredibly true for me. And something that I always try and practice is really just letting those hips surrender. Let them figure out how they can stop holding so much tension in your body. You know, we stand on our legs all day long, and it's just a really important thing to be able to let those big muscle groups that support our bodies relax. I'm going to go the opposite way. Again, you're going to see the imbalance there. It's normal. It's going to be normal for many of you as well when you start to explore through these mobility exercises. Okay, this knee obviously comes up off the ground, and that's that tight hip again that is gonna say hello to me right now. What I wanna do is try and get that knee just maybe, and again, depending on how it feels right through the outside of the knee, we don't wanna stress anything on the outside of the knee. There's a lot of connective tissue that happens inside the knee with your structural ligaments and also the iliotibial tract, the IT band that happens out here. Want to be careful not to overstretch those things. So if this feels really intense and it's too much, stop here. If you feel good and you feel like you can start to bow forward at the waist, just like we did on the other side, I'm going to come a little bit lower, and you notice that knee comes down a little bit. This is where that having a couch is nice, or an ottoman is nice, because it gives me a little play through the hip. I can reposition my hands if I need to as I start to bow forward more at the waist. This is getting really intense for me right now. So maybe take a deep breath, try and again let that hip relax and surrender some of the tension that's in it. Good, and come back and release there. You notice that we're really spending a lot of time stretching the lower part of our body. This is really the areas that are contributors towards some of the asymmetries and tightnesses that happen in the core. They always say that it's never the perpetrator that cries. So when you have a lower back issue, most of the time it's because you have an imbalance in your knee and the posterior chain, maybe your hamstring or your glute, and you need to start stretching those particular areas to be able to release some of the sensation and the tightness that happens in the lower back. So this is a really great one to remember. Okay, and that concludes our hip opener series. For the next part of the shoulder series, I'm actually going to disassemble the axle. And that means take the collar off of one side, drop the wheel down, take the collar off the other side, drop the wheel down, and then have the bar, we call this the empty bar, fully assembled but long, and our hands on the loading sleeves on the outside, which is the black part of the bar. This shoulder exercise is a little bit more challenging, and I want you guys to go slowly through this, but what we're going to start is we're going to bring the bar directly above the head and just start to feel where our shoulders are at. If we were doing an overhead squat, we might have the crooks of the elbows up in the air. But it's okay if the shoulders rotate a little bit more open. And as we get to about here, and I'll show you where I am from the side, you're going to feel a nice big stretch happening. Maybe you can't quite get there. Again, we're not pushing this right now. We need to get and find where the limit of our mobility is right now, and then understand how we can start to move it forward. If you're feeling good and you have healthy shoulders, you can actually even completely rotate around the body, as I'm seeing and showing you here. Your fingertips might come open a little bit. We call this a pass through, okay? A shoulder pass through, or an empty bar pass through. So open all the way at the bottom here. Make sure those arms are nice and straight. Bring it all the way back around. Again, if you only get to here, and this is about as far as you go, it's totally fine. Bring it right back down and just feel where we can start to mobilize through the shoulders. Second part of this, I'm going to flip the bar so it's behind my back and walk my hands all the way out as far to the sides of the loading sleeves, so as long as the loading sleeves as I can. I'm going to bring the bar the opposite way around the world. And this is only for those of you that have felt good with the shoulders thus far. Okay, we want to be able to relax Open them up, bring them all the way back around. This is a nice big pass through here. Again, you can walk your wrists out this way. That feels nice as well. But being able to mobilize and move all the way around is a healthy exercise for a healthy shoulder only, okay? So remember, if you have shoulder problems, we're gonna stay away from these. You might just go to the overhead position and then back down. Last thing we wanna work on is, this is a samurai position. We call this right behind the head, right in the middle of the back. You're gonna be holding here and then bowing forward at the waist. If you want a little bit bigger stretch on the shoulders, you can narrow your hands up so that they're closer towards each other here. And bow forward in a hinge pattern. I'll feel a nice big stretch happening there. And then pull all the way back up. You can do as many reps of these as you like. Obviously, the flatter the back, the better. If you can keep the long line of the bar in your back, that's even more better. But eventually I'm gonna go, once I'm feeling good, and switch sides. And this side for me is really tight. I'm right-handed, so I feel that right rotator cuff that's always gonna be a little bit tighter from any throwing sport. I'll show you from this side so you guys can see. But as I come down and I bow forward at the waist, right about there I feel a really big stretch and sensation happening. I wanna stop when I feel that big sensation and come back up. Gradually increase the range of motion off of it. Breathing always helps. Back up one more time, bowing at the waist. Good. And then you can release that. I feel a nice big stretch, but not anything that's uncomfortable in the shoulder, and a really good mobility exercise for the upper body. We have a few more mobility exercises that I want to show you here today. The first of which, you're going to need something that's about your waist height. So for me, I have a chair. You can use the back of a chair, and that's just fine. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with a long foot onto the chair. Obviously, this is a little bit less than ideal. Some of the other things you might use are if there's a countertop or the back of a couch. Those are things that I use a lot for this. But what you'll notice is that if I have a foot elevated here and I turn my hips down into this, whoa, I'm already feeling a big sensation happen in the back of the leg, especially when I pull my toe back towards me. What I want to do from here is I'm going to have my one left hand, so the opposite hand of the hand that is the same as the standing leg, reach around, and then the opposite hand comes and opens up. I want you to think of like a door swinging open. Swing the door open, a long reach all the way behind you. You may even squeeze and center that base glute on the standing leg, rotate all the way open. This is a major stretch, but a major pattern for us to be able to start to move through. Let's try and straighten that leg, the base leg, out just a little bit more. That's a really nice stretch that happens through there. Breathe, get a couple of breaths in, and let's go ahead and trade sides. Whew. That's a big one, especially after the run that happened earlier this morning. Same thing here. I want to make sure my left hip is rotated down. Find where my right hand is around the knee there. Pull back towards me. Left hand reaches forward, swings open like a door. Good, and bring it back closed. You can do this a couple times on either side. You'll see that I'm a little bit better on my left side than my right. Again, my right being the dominant leg, it's going to be a little bit tighter throughout each one of these mobility exercises. While we have our chair here, I want to show you a great exercise for ankle mobility. And this can be done from any chair, any step, any ledge, whatever you have around you. And I'm a big fan of using all of the things. You have really a whole gym in your household, wherever you are. If you're outside, you might use a stadium step for this, a picnic bench, a rock wall, any of those things that would be about this same height. Kind of the usefulness of having that ottoman there, except this is a stiff surface. So you do want to have a flat, hard surface wherever you're going to do an ankle mobility exercise. What is this? Why is this important? Ankle mobility is talks about the degree of angle and the mobility of the posterior chain on the lower leg, right? So how tight the gastroc and soleus mechanism are as it goes into the Achilles tendon. This tightens up over time, especially if it's not something that we stretch very much. In some people, they have great ankle mobility, and others, they're very, very tight. The reason that we like to increase ankle mobility and keep a very healthy posterior chain is because it helps with squatting and the correct loading pattern as you're moving through the lower extremity. So
You'll be able to get more glute recruitment and hamstring recruitment in the bottom of your quad if you have better ankle mobility, and you can also get more depth. Here's how we work it. You want to bend your outside knee, keeping this leg free of, it is weighted, but it's not tense, right? There's no tensile force on there. And what I want to do is I want to think about, again, gently starting and bringing the knee out in front of the toe, which we don't usually do when we're exercising, and pulling my body down, straight down, keeping this heel down. There's not a lot of tension on this leg. If you feel any pain or sensation in the knee, you may want to back off of this a little bit. But this, as you get lower, you'll feel an increase in the stretch happening. A lot of people do this from the floor and also using bands, but this is a really handy way to work on that as you're just casually standing outside next to a stadium step or wherever you might find yourself. Same thing on this side. I'm going to bring my body down. This side's a little bit tighter for me. I feel that big stretch happening just above here. That's from the run earlier. And again, my right leg, you guys are noticing my right side has some different nuances than does my left. But I'm really pulling my body low and then stretching right above. You're going to feel it kind of like at the top of the Achilles. So if you look here, it's going to be this area that we're trying to mobilize and really get more mobility with. All right, this area supports a tremendous amount of strength and load in the body, especially when you're running and jumping. So sitting down lower, that feels really nice. I'm improving the mobility here. I'm keeping my posterior chain healthy there, but not going so far that I feel like it's stressing that area. And that's your stage of the ankle mobility on this particular stretch. We have 2 more mobility exercises for this workout. I'm going to get my chair out of the way here. And the first one that we want to talk about, again, uses our empty bar. And this is called an overhead squat. And so I'm going to have, we want to establish what's called a snatch grip, which is wherever the crease of the hip is and my arms are straight is where we would be holding a snatch grip. This isn't an exercise that we practice a lot in Axel. The snatch is not the exercise, but this overhead squat is really where we signal the shoulders to be able to hold the bar. So for me, it's right about maybe about the middle of the loading sleeves on either side. I'm going to turn the bar directly above my head and turn the crook of the elbow up in the air. I'll find myself in my landing position, so a squat stance with my feet just slightly out, and I'm going to take a deep seat all the way down, trying to get my thighs to parallel, maybe slightly below parallel. That's totally okay. Pulling the floor apart with my feet. If there's a piece of paper between my feet, I want to tear that piece of paper apart and then reset the shoulder at the top every time. I'm going to get 2 more, dropping all the way down here, driving back up through the glute. The last one for this. That feels really good. And what you'll probably feel is the spinal extensors, meaning all the muscle groups on the back side of the shoulder there are working to keep you upright. This is a challenging one to be able to get right. I encourage you to practice a lot on your own. The next thing we're going to do is called a figure 4 squat. So I'm going to sit down deep, maybe make an adjustment with my ankle. My right leg's crossed over top of the knee. I'm going to sit straight down. Again, I'm working on mobility. I'm working on strength on this base leg while also increasing the mobility on my outside leg, dropping the butt down. We'll do 1 more on this side before we sit deeper. Deeper as you go. Left leg crosses over this side, and I'm going to drop all the way down. And that's feeling much better after my run earlier. You can keep the hand out to the side, or you can even keep it here if you want to make an adjustment based on that. I'm going to do 1 more on this side. Trying to get nice and deep through that hip. This also sort of wakes some of my muscles up, gets me ready for the exercise that's about to happen. All right, so that concludes our mobility workout. Things to remember going forward. You can use this as a dynamic warm-up so that you're not going in too deep of a range of motion on any of the exercises, and really just introducing your body to movement that it might experience during a particular workout or a sport. That's how we categorize a dynamic warm-up. But you can also use it as a cool down to try and gently increase some of that range of motion. Really helps balance muscles out after a workout.
and just ends up making you feel really good, really loose, and ready to start the day.